Alright. General Services Committee meeting to order. Can I get a motion to accept the June meeting minutes as recorded? Josh? Second by Andrea. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We have a presentation today. Leanne, if you'd like to go first, are you all set to, I think we had it on, you were gonna discuss the new position.
Okay, I don't really have a presentation other than if anybody has any questions.
So this is number one in the docket.
It's a discovery grant from the Criminal Justice Discovery Reform. We have a grant for $57,033. It's allowable for, the intent of the legislation is to prioritize funding for the district attorney's office as well as local police departments and sheriff's office. In light of the discovery, we got the grant last year for this amount for, at that time it was allowed for expended money from the beginning of discovery through when the grant was. So it was used for computer expenses and different things. This is for new money going forward. The money, the first year had come out of New York County's forfeiture money. They took money from that budget to give to everybody. This now is money going forward. My understanding from everything we've been told is money out of the state budget implemented every year now for discovery reform. So it's my understanding this is a recurring money and is meant to fund, it gives different things, including but not limited to expenses allowed for administrative support, including costs of staff and personnel. So I'm sorry, I sent Ryan to do the memorandum or an extensive outline of the reasoning behind we're requesting a new position to assist in doing discovery of a support position, which at the expense of the support position, I think the resolution includes for the money to go for
Yeah, office specialist.
Thank you for all the employee expenses, which would cover everything, depending obviously on unknown expenses such as health insurance of whether the person would be a single or a family plan. If it's a single plan, there would clearly be money left over that could still then cover pay of other employees in the office. This should go forward every year, so it should be a paid position. The request for the new position would be denied should we be denied the grant. We have been given the $57,000, but you still have to apply for the grant. And so you have to, in the grant, you have to say where the money's going. So this is the first step in this process. We then apply for the grant and get it, I expect, very fully. I've checked with other departments and there was no money expended by those departments for discovery. So there was no request from other line departments. So, which would be the two is the sheriff's office and the probation department. And they're both here, and if they have any requests, they can speak to it, but I did check with their departments. If there's any questions about discovery, I'm happy to answer it, but.
What's an example of what this person might do?
The position's probably gonna primarily be in assistance also because of discovery in order to teach them, but then what I wanted to be able to do is spread the discovery out between the three administrative positions we would have in my office. Right now we have two. We have Miss Hill and Miss Hill. We have Beth Hill and Karen Hill. What it would then do is add a third position that could then do all of them, because I think it's important to always cross-train in the office so that if one person is down, everybody can have the knowledge of those positions. However, what a discovery position does, so when information comes in on every file that includes felonies, misdemeanors, and violations, we have to turn that information over in a period of time, an immediate period of time, to a defense counsel if they have been arraigned and have defense counsel. What that requires is an immense amount of paperwork, really, although we do it electronically. But it requires us to review the paperwork, to upload the paperwork to, we have an electronic discovery system, it's called DEMS. That's our management system for this. We have to review it, and then we also have to do specific forms. We have to do a 245 notice, a criminal case checklist, and a certificate of compliance on these documents to ensure that they have them. But it's uploading this massive amount of paperwork that we receive from the police agencies, make sure that we have what we need. If we don't have it, like order certain forms, like the 911 calls, get those, make sure that we have videos, make sure that we can see those. We have to review them. And then sometimes we have to redact documents. In the matter of confidential drug documents, we have to redact information regarding the confidential informant. So we have to redact those items. We may have to redact certain items from videos if it contains any confidential information. So we have to use redacting tools to do all of that. We have to do that on each case. And depending upon the number of cases, felonies alone, misdemeanors, I couldn't even tell you how many we have a week. Felonies alone, we've never been caught up. I have 5 upstairs that I still have to do from, last week or this week that are being done. And so the amount of input data into that system is extensive, let alone reviewing that and organizing it within our database, organizing it then on felonies. We make our own files in addition to getting that ready to be turned over to us to do our part of that paperwork, in addition to kind of doing the regular work. So it's just becoming real overwhelming for the 2 of them, and really it's been primarily Beth. For the 2 of them, but mainly Beth, in addition to their own work, has really just become overwhelming and then falls on our shoulders in addition to our own work.
It's overwhelming just to hear about it.
It is. Some files are a little bit more straightforward. Some files are very, very time consuming. And then some files are so large that the data on them are so large, we're putting them on flash drives to turn over to defense counsel because they're so large, especially with video and things of that nature, because we're not overwhelming our data system itself by having those large items on our data system.
So, Leanne, are we within the time parameters for discovery now? Are you meeting all the deadlines now?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we are.
So
As long as we
this-
get them, we're doing them.
So could this money, this grant be applied to the current salaries that you have now?
It's really not supposed to be for old money, no. It's supposed to be for new money going forward, costs of discovery.
But it could be, if you could use it that way if you, go ahead.
The 2 positions that do the primary work are union positions, so those salaries are negotiated on the contract, so we can add additional salary there.
I'm not talking about adding salary, I'm talking about, applying it towards the current salaries.
The way it reads is not for expenses already. My understanding of the way grants always run, it is not for money that the county is already responsible for. It's for money that is used in the expense of doing something new under the budget.
But if we're within the timeline and guidelines for discovery now, why do we need another position?
Because the amount of work that's being done is being done in after hours, meaning that the burden on the staff is extremely, my staff is not being asked to work overtime because they don't get paid overtime. The rest of staff is there working weekends or out other hours to get it done.
So they're getting overtime.
They don't get paid overtime, they're salaried.
Talking about the attorneys, you and the 280.
I'm there till about 7 o'clock every night to try to keep up.
We haven't added any positions to the support staff since the new discovery rules came down, is that right?
I haven't added, we've probably lost. When I started, there were 2 positions. One was a paralegal and Beth. We lost the paralegal, we added kind of like a receptionist. And we have not added any positions since I've been here, so that's 15 years.
There was a temporary
EDA,
Cindy,
right?
but I don't think she's doing anything anymore. right?
She'll do the grant work. She's doing the grant itself. She'll write the grant and she's doing my forfeiture. She's about 15 hours a year. Cindy was former Jefferson County DA who served as an ADA.
Didn't we add ADAs, assistants, DAs to your staff?
I'm sorry?
Haven't we added assistant?
You added an assistant district attorney, yes, who has different duties than uploading the administrative part of discovery, as opposed to the work that we do, which is to review the documents once they're uploaded and put in to our system. We then have different forms that is not within their job title to do because it's the legal portion of the work that has to be done.
For my part, my preference would be to move the attorneys away from doing as much of the administrative office work as possible. Get them in the courts, get them on phone consults with judges and public defenders. They should be the ones, doing that while we leave this stuff, which is very important and it's essential to the job, to the office assistants. That's how I would ideally view the DA's office as operating. And this is, from what I understand, this is the state's way of trying to resolve one of the unintended consequences of the discovery
It
law,
is.
which has created an incredible administrative burden, and it's not just in our county, it's everywhere, which is why the state's now trying to give extra money out for these extra costs.
It is,
Is that accurate?
It's absolutely accurate. This is, they discovered when they implemented this new procedure that it's extremely heavy and burdensome on the district attorney's office. Most offices of the larger nature have administrative bureaus, not attorneys, administrative bureaus, to do the initial portion of discovery. It's still required to be reviewed by district attorneys because you have to do forms called certificates of conviction, and the other forms I mentioned have to be done by us. However, the upload or the administration portion is done by offices or bureaus involving clerical staff who do that massive amount of work, and then we come in and do the remaining part. Right now, because Beth can't do it all, we're uploading, the upload is one part, and then we're doing the remaining portion of that amount of work. And I will tell you, at the last conference, I was at the summer conference, and this is a major discussion about, from the viewpoint of assistant district attorneys, everyone feels in 62 counties is that all you've become in the last 2 years is a paper pusher as opposed to an assistant. You don't care about that, that's fine. But this is, thank you, Mr. Gilbert, is what it is become, this is probably 70% of the job anymore, is you've become a paper pusher versus an actual litigator. A person going in and having conversations, answering motions, and doing things of that nature is because discovery is so time consuming.
Any other questions for Leanne? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just a comment, what you don't see today is the resolution appropriating the grant funds. That's because we have to have a plan to submit first, so if this position is approved, it'll be part of the plan, Leanne's team will submit it, we'll recruit for the position, then we'll get the funds and appropriate them. So Eric and I talked about this, we like to have if we're talking about a grant, we like to have the accompanying appropriation in the same meeting, but we don't have those funds yet, so.
Correct, because I don't think, I have to have a plan to be able to submit where the funds are going.
So what happens if the funds dry up, then we have this extra person in that office?
Well,
What
that's
happens?
something that Leanne and I had talked about, and if the funds aren't there, then that would be a decision that the board would then have to make at
It's-
budget time.
Based upon my review, and we discussed this at the state conference, it's my understanding from Albany, this is a continual funding stream.
Anderson,
Yeah.
Yeah, I,
till it dries up.
it does seem like it, if you look at the way the pendulum swings, even in statewide politics, there was a lot of support behind bail reform and discovery reform, and now it seems like the pendulum's swinging in the other direction a little bit, even statewide, even in places like New York City, where they're realizing the consequences of creating this kind of burden on your district attorney offices. And they're the ones who are suffering quite a bit more than we are, so. It may very well dry up, but I don't think it's gonna dry up anytime soon.
I don't think discovery will dry up. I think that has become it's just been done, so it's become a constant. I think bail reform is changing. I think they've discovered the errors of being, well, I don't know that they've discovered it or are feeling the effects of the consequences of a wide pendulum swing to bail reform. I think they're sensing that and have made some changes, albeit not super significant. They've made some changes in bail reform. They have not significantly made changes in discovery.
I'm just thinking though with this funding, it seems unlikely that they would take this funding.
Oh, take it away. No, I agree. I think they
Anytime soon,
recognized, there are, what they're recognizing is that the jobs and the recidivism and retention in ability to maintain positions in district attorney's offices statewide is becoming basically a significant emergency.
Yeah.
One of the conversations that was being held is the openings and the salary disparagement between all of the offices throughout the state and the salaries and inability to keep and maintain and even hire. I know one of the conversations was how Onondaga alone has 20 open positions in their office. They can't, or 12 or 20, I believe is the number, can't keep and maintain individuals. I think Jefferson County may have an opening or two. It's just an inability to keep and maintain positions. And one of the significant reasons is the discovery reform and frustration at bail reform, but discovery reform is the main concept of it. So this is a trend that has started in offices, and pendulum always swings eventually back, but currently is not swinging in our favor. So thank you.
Next month, we'll have the public defender's office here. Their contract is up, so we'll get both sides, prosecution and defense, in back to back months. So.
And that will be, that is one of our docket items. We'll get to that just in a minute, so. The other thing on our schedule for discussion is the SRO contracts. Do we want to do that now? You think, Brian? It's up to you.
Sure.
So we had a very productive meeting, I thought, with the school superintendents and with the sheriff and the SROs. I opened it up to the committee. This is a discussion time. And I know some of us have spoken. Do we have any other thoughts? Where do we stand? I guess so. I should say first of all, for the benefit of the public, the proposal that we heard from Mr. Primo and his colleagues was a suggestion of moving our SRO model toward a 100% funding model where the schools would cover their expenses while they're employed. And then after their retirement, which happens, granted, it's 20 years for sheriff's deputies. After that 20-year retirement, the county assumes the responsibility of covering the legacy costs, which is their insurance, their health insurance, which is no small number, but their health insurance from that point on. So it's 100%, and with that, they would then devote 100% of their time to the schools, except for certain days out of the year when when they're not needed at the school, such as during certain breaks or when summer school is not in session, they would report to the sheriff to assist with any recreation patrol. That was what they had suggested, and that was kind of where we left the meeting. And I welcome any input from this committee.
I agree with that, but I also would like to suggest we do a multi-year contract so we don't have to go through this year after year after year like we have been. And there's outs on both sides, so there's no reason, in my opinion anyway, not to have a multi-year contract.
What was our prior arrangement? How many years was that?
Year to year.
They were year to year? Okay.
With that, there was, we got the calendars from the school. Thank you, Doug, for that. It was highlighted and subject to change, obviously. But those days that were highlighted, minus the homecoming, graduation, prom, et cetera, those are the days that they would be available to, at the discretion of the sheriff, to perform Park and Rec. So, thank you for that, Doug. I like, just me personally, I like the year-to-year contract. It's just something, it's, an officer could change, a sergeant could change. But, It's just my opinion.
My thought on multi-year would be, as Josh points out, is to try, is to have the first year be a single year, and then we can revisit and entertain a multi-year contract.
I'm just trying to spare us the pain. Just trying to spare us the pain.
Another
But
thought,
that makes good sense, what you just said, actually.
it's possible too, I mean, after a year, Beaver River might be on board, or Lovable might be on board, or maybe one of the schools will want to change it, something like that. It could be multi-year, would be useful down the road. Personally, I'm more comfortable just trying it for 1 year. And we can revisit it and get everybody in again and see how it's going. I think that would be my personal preference. But I see your point too, Phil, about, because we spent a lot of time on this, definitely.
Okay.
I like the idea, I mean, we've talked about the SROs, and this is something that existed before I was on the board, and I know for Josh as well. I like the idea of moving the trail safety, the recreation safety, just out of this discussion completely. Because I think that's ended up muddying the waters a lot, and I think with the contracts that we drafted up, it put a real burden on the schools when they really had no control over what was going on with our own operations. And I think that still leaves open this big issue that we need to work on some more permanent solution with our problem with the rail, or I keep saying rails, that's on for discussion too, but with our trail system, with our recreation patrol. At least this way, we don't have to keep dragging the schools into it.
Well, but my understanding is the expectation is that the SRO officers are still gonna do recreation patrol in the hours that they're not being utilized by the school.
Right.
So it's not, we haven't divorced the two discussions. They're still the same, it's just that the funding has changed.
Yeah, it's not completely, but it does at least relieve the schools of having to deal with that, I think.
Josh, how many days was that? I didn't print that out. About, it doesn't.
It was on the summary there. It was 50, was it 58?
It was 53 days that the SRO could be assigned to the sheriff's office. Again, looking at current calendar year.
Correct.
Shaded day or
Thank
three, but
Yeah,
And
I
we know
did
a
a
lot
little
of
bit more analysis on that. From South Louis, the county would have 48 days available, and then 3 half days in August. Because also, Doug, that one last week where you have labeled for needed half days, I believe that last week in August is actually the week that the SRO training is involved. And I think those are full days, so they're really not available to either. But, well, actually, that would be on the county's burden because they're going to training. So the taking out 20, up to 25 weeks of vacation or personal days or sick days for any one of those SROs, the county will have approximately 24 days available.
That's assuming all of the days would be spent on county time, or all of their vacation days would be spent.
That's
an
assuming that
assumption.
they've used up 25 vacation days, personal sick days, whether it's during the school year when they're on vacation, which they would have been available for us, or during the summer break. So it's a net to the county about 24 or 25 days a year.
Any other thoughts from the committee? Andrew, do you have any?
I think we should try it for a year and see how it goes.
On the subject of backfilling SROs, I think the way we left it is that we were not going to backfill SROs if they took a day vacation unless it was an extenuating circumstance where they were off for more than a week with an injury or sickness, or is that where we're at?
Sounds good to me.
I would agree with that.
Sure.
Another one of the things we won't.
And just to follow up on that, I mean, Larry just said a week. I think it would be good if you have a very strict, is it 3 days, is it a week? I mean, at what point does it fill in? Trigger.
And does that person have to have training?
And I think, well, I was gonna say, I think the schools, I don't know what the school's input on that would be, but, if the SRO is gone for, again, if they're gone for 3 days, is that a point where the school says, hold on, time out, we want somebody?
Doug, any thoughts
Mr.
on that?
Primo, what do you think?
Yeah, I think our preference would be on any day, understanding the situation, though, I think if it was 3 days or more, that would be a reasonable, I think, compromise between, say, a full week and a single day. In regards to the training, I think it may be unrealistic to expect every potential school resource officer to have had training for a week, because it could be really any deputy at any time. Certainly, I think some orientation to the school district, some conversation with current SROs, maybe some shadowing time, when they can fit it in. And I do know the deputies do stop by the school on occasion, but I guess just my perspective is if you're expecting every single potential backfill to have specific training for an SRO, that may really knock almost all of them out. It may make it not optional or not possible.
But you think just having a deputy there after the 3 days or whatever, they've got a broken leg or something like that, that would be useful to you though? Having even a deputy who's maybe hasn't gone through all the SRO training, or an undersheriff, or, just, one of the deputies.
Yeah, I do believe so, because I think an SRO, in terms of the big picture, the training is really for the job itself over a 12-month period. The backfill is really for a little different purpose. It's for presence, it's for, safety concerns on a different level than the day-to-day work of a typical SRO.
So want to say 3 days then?
And you know ahead of time anyways, if someone's out for consistently 3 consecutive days. I'd be good with that.
Undersheriff McIntosh, do you have anything you want to add? I know you weren't at the meetings, but, okay, thank you. Doug, I know we're coming down to the wire. If we, based on what we've discussed, if we put together a contract for our board to vote on in August, will that leave enough time, you think, for your school boards to vote on it and approve it, or?
Yeah, I do think so, and maybe what you want to consider is maybe a September 1 through August 30th model. I mean, traditionally, school district contracts run from July 1st to June 30th. Just because in this situation, if we're doing a 12-month payment model, we've already missed the summer months by the time it goes into effect. So maybe, again, it's not a bad thing, it's just a different thing that we would be used to. But maybe a September 1st to an August 30th model that works for.
And you're not using the SROs now in the summer, so it's not like there's any lapse in terms of coverage or?
Correct, they're currently not with us.
So what should we do procedurally? If we're all-
You need this, do we need to hold on to move it forward?
Make a motion based on those details that we discussed, and then we'll turn that into a resolution for the August 2nd.
I'll make that motion. 100%. 9/1 to 8/31, 3 days would get a 3 consecutive days. That's a good point, Larry. get a replacement, temporary replacement.
Yeah, and then for days when they're not needed at the school, they will report to the sheriff to assist with recreation patrol.
Given ample notice. So, not that day of it, I guess.
So that's your motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We'll move on to the dockets now.
The first docket is amending compensation plan with reference to the district attorney's office by creating one full-time office specialist position at grade 11, salary range $16.13 to $18.77 an hour, subject to receiving the required grant funding.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing renewal agreement between Lewis County Probation Department and Automon LLC for software maintenance at a cost of $6,528.70.
Any discussion? Ryan, you said this was the software that they use at
Their case management.
the case management, okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis and O'Rourke Groundwater Development LLC for hydrofracking and testing services required for the Singing Waters Park Bathhouse Facility Project at a cost of $3,500 and an additional $1,200 depending upon results of hydrofrac for Department of Health required stabilization, pumping test, and certification.
Any discussion?
Jack, is that $1,200? I don't know what Department of Health requires, but does that cover whatever that
Yes.
spectrum is?
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing Snowmobile Trail 2022 to 2023 grant and aid application to the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation for trail maintenance expenses in Lewis County.
Any discussion? I'm curious, how much does this work out to in real dollars? Do you know?
Short 300,000,
I think last year was 336,000.
290,
Goes down.
300.
Okay.
Great.
This is the program that we'd love for the state to replicate with ATV registrations.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Transferring $100,000, $50,000 from contingency and $50,000 from jail personnel services into jail inmate board account line for covering additional costs incurred for boarding of inmates at outside facilities.
Any discussion? And I know we did get a good report from the sheriff's office that explains a little bit where these added costs came from. Did you have anything you wanted to add on there, Ryan? I know we discussed it.
Nope, one of those things, when you've got a jail, there's expenses that come down the line that we can't really control. There's been years where we've had to transfer in for jail medical, jail food.
Some of this
Anytime
has to do
you've got
with COVID protocols still too, right?
Anytime you've got a variable of the amount of people that are in there, it's going to change the expenses. But yeah, we still have to summarize the very high level summary is we still have to quarantine folks before they enter the pods. We only have, 2 or 3 quarantine pods, and they're already filled with folks that can't be in general population. So that means we're doing a lot of transferring. So
I thought we bailed it for him, nobody was injured.
Good thought.
plus, don't forget, we had to ship people out for like 3 days when we had that flooding issue in like March. So
And we're just moving money around in the sheriff's department accounts, so we're not actually.
partially.
Yeah,
Oh.
I can hit them with the one. I had some conversations with the sheriffs and staff, and they're actually running under budget on their personnel line. They're running over budget on their overtime line because of the situation, they're incurring overtime, but, so they offered to use some of their personnel line item. Ryan and I thought it did make sense to use some contingency funds. It's a situation that was unexpected. So that's where we split it, to kind of balance that out.
Any other discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Transferring $75,000 from E911 personal services to E911 miscellaneous equipment line for the E911 telephone project.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Amending compensation plan with reference to the solid waste department by abolishing one MEO part-time grade 18 salary range $19.12 to $22.48 per hour, and creating one MEO full-time grade 18 salary range $19.12 to $22.48 per hour.
Any discussion?
So the reason that we're doing this is that our volume has remained incredibly high at solid waste. And we're having a hard time having part-timers to fill in here and there. So we're hoping, really our guys, I was just up there on Friday and one of the guys that's been with us for a long time said he usually takes vacation this week. And he's not going to because he knows how much volume's still coming through. And that kind of reinforced the discussion that Kip and I had about getting those guys an extra set of hands up there. Which, they're an enterprise fund. When volume's high, that means our revenue's high too, so they can afford that. Right.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Right, in addition to that, when will the scale on it start?
When we sign the
The
contract, yeah.
contracts just went out. The award was made and the contracts are to the, I forget the name of the company, Continental, so they should be starting up pretty soon.
Just curious. Thanks.
We don't have any motions today.
No, I do not have any motions.
Okay. Any new business to discuss today? So two things, I don't want to forget them, but one of the discussions we've been having, and this was an idea that started with one of the town boards with New Bremen, the town board meetings at New Bremen. We have, as a county, made a lot more revenue in the last year from sales tax on fuel because of the inflation in the price of gas. That is an offset in many ways for our Department of, for our highway department for all of their costs. Towns, as we know, in Lewis County, because of a strange quirk of state law, they do not get any direct benefit from sales tax revenue if the county does not have a city, and we're one of the few counties that has no city in it. So the discussion that we've been having, that I've been having with that town was toward sharing some of the sales tax revenue that we made in this last year to help offset that increase in cost. I know, Ryan, you took a look at some different possible funding formulas. I want to put it out as a discussion item for this committee. Do we want to, well, first of all, do we want to proceed with a possible one-time disbursement of our extra sales tax revenue to assist the towns and villages? And then if we do want to do that, how do we then determine allocation? Because there are a lot of different formulas you could use. You could base it on population, tax assessment, total road mileage. But first, I'll open it up for that first point of discussion. Is this something that we want to proceed on?
I always like to share with the towns, actually. And we have the funds to do that with. And actually, I like what you did, Ryan, with the road miles. It makes sense because it's in conjunction with their increased cost of fuel, which is very substantial. Like double.
I would think you'd have to look at a model that's appropriate for all the towns. Mileage is a good way of looking at it, because obviously the highway fund is the majority of the operating expense, other than fixed costs. I guess just dive into a model that can be presentable across the board. to look at.
And villages, right?
Yeah.
To be
Do
consistent
that,
and
yeah,
fair.
yeah, it's all towns, all municipalities.
Yeah.
I say towns and all.
And I did the same thing.
My thought would be to, look into, investigate two models. One, well, first off, are we talking about all the mileage within a town inclusive of county road or just town roads?
We did just town roads that were, basically, we took the CHIPS mileage for each town.
Okay.
And I haven't broken out the village number out of that yet because I gotta chat with Tim. So it really shakes out very differently depending on how you do that calculation. Population does not match road mileage. In fact, they're almost inverse because Loudville is very dense and has a lot of population under not as many miles. Montague has a lot of miles, not many people. So then, property tax value is another way to go about it. So
The thing
we
is,
got a few options.
you could have a road that has a lot of really nice homes on it and high assessments. The obligation to maintain that road is the same as a road, with just one small house on it.
Fire drill.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So we can work it up, we can work it up however you guys want. If you give us some direction today, we can bring it back next month and have it distributed.
Let's do two models, one town roads, two, town assessment.
Roads and assessment, okay. We pretty much already have those built, so we could do those two and then even a 50-50, you can split the difference or something.
Sure. And then there's some deals where we do some work for them and they do some work for us. Maybe let's just keep that out of the whole reckoning. Because most of that's just kind of quid pro quo anyways. We give something to them, we give something back. All in hand.
The model could end up to be a combination of assessment and mileage.
Right, that's what I was thinking. Okay, so we'll bring that back to general services next month then.
Was there any rush, and did you want this for the August?
No, I don't think there's any rush.
Just on that end for the future, I'll just accuse myself of this, just due to a conflict of interest for future.
Just the mayor.
Perfect.
So we don't have to act on that today. We'll just try to do some more homework and get back to it next month. Any other new business? I'll mention just briefly, Lisa and I went out to the village of Krogan, had a very, I thought, productive meeting with their village board about the Rails to Trails project. I have plans to go to the town of Denmark tonight to hear some input from them. For me, it's very beneficial to be getting feedback from the community. The one thing that I'm hearing more and more from people, at least in my neck of the woods, is a preference moving away from ATV use and toward things like biking and hiking, stuff that, for one thing, would reduce a lot of the noise and a lot of the troubles that we see with our recreation trails in terms of needing to enforce things. And then also, it's something that would be more used by the community. Tourism is obviously an important part of what we do. I think you're more likely to travel to a place like Lewis County for ATV or snowmobile use, whereas if you're looking at someone pushing a stroller down, a little bit of track or going for a run or, biking on a Saturday morning, I think more likely that would be something that is used by someone in the community. That's just the general impression I'm getting. But I'm sure we'll want to continue to keep those avenues of conversation open for the community. I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to add on that. If there's no other business, then can I get a motion to adjourn? Josh,
You beat,
you still second it if you want.
I'll second.
Second by Phil. All in favor, say aye. As opposed, say nay. Motion carries. The meeting is now adjourned.
I make a motion to accept the June 21st, 2022 Health and Human Services Committee minutes. If I can get a second. First up, we have Crystal Clutch in the hot seat, opposite
And
to
with
the
the
aging
whole OFA
director.
staff.
Oh, nice.
Hi, everyone. I brought you handouts.
Do you want your presentation for this one as well, or?
This is the one, David. Yep.
Good one. Thank you.
Would you like one?
Crystal, can I have one, please? Here you go.
Hi, Crystal, how are you?
Great, how are you? Good. It's okay if I sit? All right, well, thanks for having me. I'd like to update you all on how we're doing with our home care services and talk about some ideas for moving forward. So, home care is one of our core services at OFA, as our pretty little pictures here show. Our home care services cover a lot of basic needs for older community members, people over 60, like grocery shopping, laundry, our aides head to the bank for folks, they help out with cleaning, getting folks up and moving, all those basic things that we all need to make sure get done around our house every week and get harder for us as we age. We talk a lot about aging in place, so this whole idea of being able to age in our homes and not have to move to a nursing home for additional care. And I feel like the only way we can age in place is with support. Some of us have support from friends and family, some of us are able to hire support, and some folks look to us for the aging for that support or to Medicaid. Curtis and Dickob and Shannon Frappier-Farney are here today. There are two case managers at OFA, and they work with folks to coordinate all of these services. So they go out, they meet with our clients to understand what the needs are, and then they help provide that ongoing support and coordination. Not only services from OFA, but also helping the client access other resources in the community that might be helpful to them, like helping them apply for SNAP or getting them on our home delivered meals program. And that last bullet there just outlines again what our home care services are, the types of housekeeping and personal care that our aides do for folks in the home. So at OFA, we really prioritize personal care, like bathing and dressing, getting a good shower, getting washed up, your dental care. These are some of our core parts of taking care of ourselves. And so we really prioritize that type of care over housekeeping. But think of how important housekeeping is. Shannon said to me the other day when we were talking about this presentation to you all, Shannon and I both care very much how our house is kept. I get a little nervous if things are disorderly. I vacuum almost every day. This is important to me. Imagine if I was 84 and had mobility issues, couldn't really move around, and I couldn't do that care of my house that I've prided myself on my whole life. That would really impact my mental health and my quality of life, I think. So I think housekeeping is very, very important for our well-being and healthy aging for a variety of reasons.
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
That's right, Ryan. And if you've ever been in a home that has people living in it that aren't able to care for it, we all know how stressful that is. So here's a breakdown over the last few years from 2017 of the number of clients that we're serving on our home care program. And the moral of the story here is that our home care service is dramatically declining. And that's because of the availability of aides. And we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail in the upcoming slides. But I wanted you to see, this really struck me when I saw it in green and green. the decline in our ability to provide care. I mean, obviously in 2020, some folks made the choice not to have an aide come to their home. They felt like the risk was too great. But we also lost a lot of aides during the pandemic. And we haven't really been able to rebound. Is that striking to you all? Okay, I'll just take that as a yes. All right, our waiting list. So I remember when I was the home care social worker, when I first moved to Lewis County 8 years ago, I would call up Office for the Aging to try to get my clients on home care services, and there was a waiting list. And I thought to myself, how can that be? These services are so important. How can they have a waiting list over there? And so it was my goal when you all gave me the privilege to take this position to get rid of that waiting list. And we had almost done that at the team was getting there in 2019 and 2020, but our waiting list has continued to grow. So we have 27 people right now that are waiting for housekeeping, personal care, and respite. 27 people that Curtis and Shannon have met with, but that we can't provide service to because US Care, the main agency that we contract with, just doesn't have aides. And there's no way to measure the number of folks who've called us needing services, but haven't wanted to go through the process of having us come out, sit down with them, ask them a bunch of questions about their life, and get them on our waiting list. Some people hear that we have a waiting list and they don't want to go through the process to get on a waiting list, but they're likely eligible. So our home care services, the state term for them is ISAP. So it's an income-based program. And if one person makes their monthly income is below $1,699 a month, they are eligible for our services. If their income is above that mark, then there's a sliding scale fee where they cost share some of their services. We have a small number of people who cost share in the program. I want you to keep in mind that Medicaid eligibility starts at $954 a month. And I put approximate there because our healthcare expenses, outstanding health insurance bills, there's, qualifying for Medicaid is a complicated process. But as you can see, our program is designed to serve people between that Medicaid eligibility and that $1,699 a month. We're designed to serve low-income seniors and help them maintain their quality of life and self-care at home before they reach Medicaid eligibility. And in the star there, you can see that our program serves older adults approaching nursing home eligibility. So, maybe I'm having trouble showering, but I can still manage my own medications and pay my own bills. Or maybe I have a little bit of dementia, and so I need prompting to take my medications, but my mobility is fine. I can take my shower on my own. I just need someone to remind me to take my medications, to eat, and and my wife has passed away, so no one does my housekeeping for me. So these are the types of clients that we serve at OFA. And on our program, we serve them for around 6 years on average for less than $10,000 a year per person. When we compare that to folks who are on Medicaid and in the nursing home, that can range anywhere from $130 to $150 a year for that one person in a nursing home. So our program is cheap, and we're keeping people at home, which we know all of our friends and family members want, to be at home.
I think this is a key point about the Medicaid because that's the expense that is most fearful to counties. Because for years, the counties had to split that Medicaid cost based on a floating scale. The state capped our expense at $5 million back in 2014 or so, 14-15. Since then, we've been capped at $5 million. But if you remember, we went to Albany 3 years ago for the Keep the Cap fight because the state was threatening to bring back the model to where each county is responsible for a percentage share of Medicaid. So if we think of it in those terms, we need people to stay in their homes, first of all, it's good for them, but also financially for the county. You know, if the state Medicaid bill gets too big, they will come back to the well of county governments. So it's actually smart financially for us to push this program because, you know, anyone that ends up in a nursing home is a much larger bill, obviously. So,
And if Ryan's approaching Medicaid eligibility, he just got home from the hospital, but his aide is coming in, making sure he eats lunch, making sure he gets in the shower, getting him up, getting him moving. His recovery from that hospitalization's gonna be leaps and bounds above me if I'm just home, sitting there, not having lunch, not taking my medications. I'm gonna end up back in the hospital. And then I'm gonna probably get to my Medicaid eligibility quicker. I'm not moving, David. Thanks. So this is a breakdown of our different funding sources for our home care services. It's a little complicated, so I tried to simplify it. But basically, we have these 4 main funding streams. And these dollar amounts here is what we have budgeted in the 22-23 state fiscal year, just for our aid services. So this isn't our total home care budget. It doesn't include OFA staff person time or any maintenance and operations. This is just the funds that are set aside to pay for the aids. So the ISAP program is a state funding stream, and we get 153 from them, and that includes our mandatory match of 25%, that 153. The Alzheimer's Association gives us $16,200 for respite services. So anybody who's caregiving for someone with dementia is eligible for those services. There's actually no income guidelines for that program. And then there's this catch-all of New York State respite funds. It's a couple different state funding streams, but I just kind of called it New York State respite. That's about $45,000, and that also includes our mandatory 25% match. And then about 2 years ago, this was really 3 years ago, the state started this unmet needs funding. So it's a new funding line that's been in each state budget since 2019. This year we set aside $17,000 from our unmet needs funds for home care services, but that in total, we got 119 in unmet needs. We've just used it in some other creative ways this year. So that's about $231,000 that we have for home care services. Yeah. Thanks. So here's the way we use those funds. We pay the U.S. Care Systems, which is a home care agency out of Utica, by the hour to send aides into the homes of folks that we refer to them. The current contract is $27.62 an hour for housekeeping and $28.03 an hour for personal care. We've really increased that rate. In 2019, it was at $23.39. It's not making a difference. They're not able to hire aides, they're not able to keep them. And I think part of the reason is that they're paying the aides $16 an hour. Seniors Helping Seniors is another organization that we work with out of Watertown. It's a fairly new contract. They haven't been successful hiring aides in our community. I don't think they're doing the outreach needed to get folks hired here. And then we have our consumer directed care. So that's where I need an aide and my sister's neighbor is willing to come in and be my aide. That's called consumer directed care, where it's someone I know who's going to provide the care for me, and they're going to get paid through Planet Staffing or Consumer Directed Choices, these two agencies that sort of, they're called fiscal intermediaries. They help manage the money. Consumer Directed Choices, you just reviewed that or approved that contract last month. They're a new organization, well, new to us out of Albany. They have some innovative practices that we're going to experiment with and see if they do a better job than Planet Staffing hiring aides. And we agreed on this much higher dollar amount of $27 an hour.
Crystal,
Yep,
do the aides have to have any training? Can there be anyone?
most of US Cares aides are home health aides, like trained home health aides. But for our level of service, you don't have to have any formal training, no. And the consumer directed aides definitely don't have to have any formal training. That's part of the model, is that it's not informal, but that the client is self-directing enough and able to make their own decisions to tell you what they need and how to do it for them. I'm ready to move forward, David. Thanks. So I think that model that we just looked at isn't working for these 4 reasons. And all the directors of AAA, of Offices for the Aging across the state are all saying the same thing. We're not paying our aides enough. As you can see in my two little graphics here, you probably can't see that one from Walmart, but you can make up to $22 an hour working overnight at Walmart, right? So if you had a choice between that and driving from house to house, not getting paid, the aides aren't paid for their time when they're driving from house to house. They're not paid for their mileage. Most of them are young, sometimes single moms who maybe have a car that works some of the time. So, and they're making $16, $17 an hour. And they can go to Dunkin' and make $15 an hour and not have to do incredibly intimate care for people, drive from place to place, not get paid for that time that they're driving. It's a difficult job, and I don't think we're adequately, as a society, compensating aides. There's also high turnover because there's really little support. These aides are out in folks' homes doing really difficult work, and they don't really have a team that they come back to. Their agency is in Utica. It's just they're kind of just out there on their own. Any questions about this? I feel like it's a really important point.
I would just add that the Priorities Council did an entire analysis of the shortage of in-home aides that Pat Freilich led that 2 or 3 years ago. So this is not new that we've been talking about this staffing issue.
No, it's just getting
It's getting
worse. Yeah. Okay, David, I'm ready. So because the US Care hasn't been able to place aides in folks' homes, we've had money that's gone unspent each year. This year, we're not gonna have money that goes unspent because we made the decision to start the Age in Place program with Lewis County Opportunities. I wasn't gonna let that happen again. So, but I wanna make a plan to use these unspent funds moving forward. We can't leave money on the table when there's people that need service, right? Okay, David, I'm ready. So here's the 2 creative options that Brian and I have been talking about and brainstorming about that I think we all have to think about. We have this approximate budget in 2023. Of course, we're developing our 2023 budget now, but it's around $230,000 for the aid services. I feel like we have 2 options. The first option, option A, we could create 2 full-time and 1 part-time new county positions. I think we would put the position at the case aide level, and so there we have right there what the person, the aide would make. And there's my estimate of about how much those positions would cost us annually. Of course, I don't have an estimate of, the retirement costs and long-term health insurance costs of a position. It's significant, as we all know. And we would have those aides drive county cars and so there would be, I don't know if that's a good estimate, how much the mileage and the county cars would cost, but I just used $20,000 as an approximate. There's pros and cons to this. Part of me loves this idea that they'd be on our team, they'd be working with us, we would be able to partner with the aide, we'd hear day to day how our clients were doing. But this isn't our business. Like I said, when I worked at Home Health, I worked with the aides. I know what managing aides and managing that schedule is like, and that's not really our specialty at OFA. Do I think we could do it? I sure do, but I'm trying to think of an analogy. It'd be like, it would be a new venture for us that we would need to, probably partner with some other county departments to make happen. And it would also be a little bit of not a step backwards, but where there used to be aides. And Jenny could speak to this in more detail, but there used to be aides and the county thought, this isn't what we do, let's contract this out. So there's a part of me that's like, doesn't feel great about going back to this, but we have to do something.
But would this kind of fix our problem?
Well,
Would it help?
it would go a long ways towards fixing the problem, which is why I'm presenting it as an option that our team is willing to do if you all were to support this idea, because we can't just keep having the waiting list build, not spend money, and not have people be served. Option B looks a little different. So option B, we would have 2 or 3 full-time positions at US Care. So I've talked with US Care some about this. If this is would be a completely new arrangement for them. So they have a lot of questions and they're not really sure, but I'm trying to talk them into it. Part of how I want to talk US Care into it is by making it a dollar amount that they can't refuse. So paying them $35 an hour for a 40-hour-a-week position for the whole year. So really it's kind of like paying them a salary to have 2 or 3 aides full-time devoted to the Office for the Aging. That these would be aides that are paid a little bit more than their other aides, and they would only see Lewis County Office for the Aging clients. So that math works out to be a little bit higher. I think the benefit is that this is what they do. This is what US Care does, and it would keep it out of our house and let them do the work that they do, compensate them significantly for it. And we would also agree to pay those aides mileage. In some counties, they're doing creative things like developing an agreement where the aide can drive a county car. This is Fulton County. Fulton County is doing this, where the outside agency's aide reports to the county office building every morning and drives the county car to see her clients. I'm thinking, let's not do that right away. Let's see if this would work, and let's pay them mileage. Hopefully that works, but if transportation continues to be a huge barrier, that's something we can consider moving forward. Even with hiring 3 full-time aides, we still wouldn't be able to cover all the hours of all the people on our waiting list. But it would, 3 aides would get us about 75 to 90 hours a week in care. And right now we have 220 hours waiting for service. So it gets us about halfway there.
So you could potentially keep 6 full-time aides.
Yeah. But we don't have the money for that right now with our state funding and their current county level.
Crystal,
Yeah.
what about, in addition to these 2 options, what about the possibility of offering in the existing contracts to those outside agencies some money towards the transportation of those aides?
I don't think it would make a speck of difference.
No?
Because they can't hire people. That's the
So
problem.
that's not gonna work then, because you're just telling us US Care can't hire people.
I think they can't hire people because it's not a full-time position.
So option B is kinda,
Nope, I think what's different, but Joan's saying keep the existing contract but help pay transportation.
Right.
okay.
Those aides are sometimes working 20 hours, sometimes working 30 hours, they're not being paid
Right.
in between clients, they're not guaranteed a full-time job, so like, a man who's in my life has a US Care aide. She comes to his house at 7:30 in the morning and sees him helps him for an hour before she goes to the hospital for her shift at the nursing home. She does that 3 times a week. Because she makes probably $21 an hour at the nursing home. What we need is to lure her away from the nursing home, want her to have a full-time job at US Care. And she's adequately paid, about the same as she would make at the hospital. She's paid the whole time she's at work, and she's paid mileage. That's completely different than now. It's like this hodgepodge system where these aides are getting a few hours here, a few hours there, not getting paid in between clients.
So how much would they be making, an aide making under option B, would you say?
I would like to ask US Care to pay them $19 to $21 an hour based off of their level of experience.
Are these aides eligible to make more money if they have some sort of certification?
With our existing contract model.
Or, you know, any aides out there that are working in the home, is there any kind of?
That's not really the way home care is funded, wouldn't you say, Jenny?
Right, so the difference, so we provide home care at DSS too very similarly, but we don't have an age cap, we have an income cap. The aides get paid to work by the hour by the client. So the difference would be, like, the Medicaid rate isn't gonna move, that's in state hands. So their aides would be paid at an enhanced rate already. My aides have to meet a different criteria, higher level criteria. They have to be personal care aide level 2 certified. Crystals don't have to be certified. So.
But if US Care hires someone who's a certified home health aide, they're not gonna make more money.
They're not gonna make more because they're providing personal care level care, not home health aide.
And because that Jenny's Medicaid rate is so fixed. And I've tried to get US Care to pay aides more to see OFA clients, which is kind of evil because I'm hurting Jenny's clients. But they won't do it because they feel like it would create distension among their aides and that they wouldn't know how to manage it and da.
Are there any other companies
Nope.
besides US Care?
Nope.
We tried.
They just, they won't come, they don't have.
It won't, because our market is so small.
This is a statewide and national problem. This is not just a Lewis County problem. I think Crystal's come up with some pretty awesome options to try to change the dynamic here in Lewis County. I don't know one county, whether you're OFA or DSS or public health or in hospital, that can recruit enough workers at this point that provide healthcare level services. So
But the
this
other,
is an attempt to even it out, to give someone a full-time job that would get benefits, that would get health insurance through US Care. So it becomes a very attractive job because it's, you're gonna get your 2 weeks vacation, you're gonna get your 40-hour work week at X dollars
And that is
per
what-
hour.
I feel like they don't want like a part-time. So
no,
I think some people.
some
It's
do,
the part-time hobby.
some do, but we want
But you
to,
do
some
feel-
some aides really like home care. You probably,
So you do feel that there are aides out there who would jump at option B? At a full-time,
what do you guys think? You talk to the aides more than any of us.
I think so. I mean, we've talked to a lot, well, not a lot, but a couple of people who would be interested in that. But it's, because they don't like going to 6, 7 different houses in a day. So, I mean, it could potentially be, 2 hours here, 2 hours there to add up to that 40 hours. It's a lot of hopping around.
We're seeing the agencies just losing people. Whether they left for a higher paying job or their client passed away. A lot of them have worked with a certain person for so long, they feel bad leaving their job. But after that person passes away, then they say, I'm not gonna take anyone else.
I'll go to the hospital and make
Out,
$20,
or
$21 now.
they just retire because, seniors helping seniors, a lot of the aides are older adults too. So it's becoming one of those things where we need new people to be attracted to work for these agencies because a lot of these aides that we have now have been working there for years and finishing up clients, but then not making new ones on.
They're just waiting for an excuse to leave.
Exactly.
And under the current model, the aides are not being compensated for mileage and they're driving their own vehicles.
Right.
So that's another deterrent.
So you're out of your house for over 40 hours a week, but you're only getting paid 20 some kind of thing. Because you're driving to and from clients.
So wouldn't option A be more beneficial to the county?
That's what I'm thinking.
Because you have the control, for one, and you're not paying the middleman.
I think if you all want to go that way, that was my original, ask Ryan, I've been talking about that for a few months now with him. I think there's pros and cons to it. And we'll do it, I think there's legacy costs for the county.
For sure.
But it's a service we need.
100%,
So
100%.
what are we gonna do, shut the door on them?
No,
Or do we wanna help them?
I wanna help them.
So.
Yeah.
I think we should do option A right now.
I think that I would ask you to think about, in option A, the level of supervision and who's required to supervise an aide.
That's why, that's the,
Not right.
that's the.
It's not, Jenny, not for mine.
Not for yours,
No.
mine's not.
So I think there's some
You're right,
larger
there's nothing.
context here to remember. One is that, like we talked about, it was a subtle point that Jenny made earlier, but to be eligible for Crystal's program, it's based on age and income a little bit, but age. We've got a lot of folks in the community, whether they could be younger but are disabled, right? We've got a lot of folks that are eligible under Jenny's program as well. We have an age shortage that is much broader and wider than just Office for the Aged. Also, these same people are competing for we're competing for the same pool of candidates really for the nursing home at the hospital, which is really struggling for staffing. And we know we have need there as well. So there is a little bit of context to consider. And then the reason I think that to reinforce my skepticism, although I think it's a great idea, but my skepticism is we're now taking on the liability of having people unsupervised in homes that are solely our responsibility. When you go through an agency, yes, there's the middleman, but it's also that buffer as well.
Right, we would have to figure out how to train them, and do the ongoing training. That's something I would probably need to talk to home health, so the Lewis County Home Health, if they would be willing to have us pay them to train them. But they're very busy and very overwhelmed. They might say, no, we're not interested in that. I don't have an RN that can train them, and it has to be an RN that provides the training. They don't need RN supervision. I'm a social worker, so by Department of Health law, I can supervise them. But God forbid, what if I were to leave you all? Then you wouldn't have a social worker to
That's the other,
supervise them.
we have the talent and the personnel at OFA right now to handle that. But you're hiring 3 people for the next, hopefully 20 years.
Right.
That's where you think of those things as well. I don't mean to be negative on this idea. In fact, I think it's a great idea. And if you look at the amount of money we're talking about here, $231,000. I mean, that's in the big scheme of what the county does. You could easily take a little more to support this program if that's what the legislators wanted to do.
I think that 231 would be low, because if your case aides are still, only making upwards of $19 an hour, you're going to struggle as US Care has been also struggling. Could we add these aides to Lewis County Home Health?
We've talked about that option, but we haven't explored it with them because
There wasn't a lot of.
there's some capacity issues, or I just don't.
I did talk to the hospital.
You did?
Yes.
What they said?
I thought anyway, I don't think there was a ton of enthusiasm.
Right.
Behind that idea, but I have talked to some folks at the hospital, yes. So, but anyway, the point is we don't need to make a decision today.
Right.
We were trying to put the ball on the tee, knowing that we're having budget meetings literally starting in the next couple of weeks. You're gonna have a budget presentations in front of these committees over the next few months. And we wanted to set the stage for the fact that we're gonna probably need a little more money, and we might be adding some positions potentially in Crystal's department. So rather than have to explain all that along with all the other 300 budget decisions, we wanted to give you some time ahead of time to know that this is what we're looking at, basically.
And right now, I feel like for the last month, I've been working hard on exploring both of these options. So I'm talking with US Care about option B, would they be willing, what would the numbers look like? And I can continue working on and building a budget for option A. And then,
What about the cars? Does this mean you have to have an additional 3 cars?
especially, yes, for option A.
I personally know somebody who runs a home health agency down in the county, and she Ubers all of her staff to jobs. Because that is more cost effective than having them leave and train new people. So that's the reality of the situation working with people who are making this amount of money. It's not a lot of money to have things like cars, childcare.
It's even worse in urban environments. I know she's from an urban community, but there's OFAs in cities that just aren't. In Buffalo, they're not spending any of their money, not because the contracted agencies do not have aides and just don't even try to honor the OFA contracts. Because they can't honor their Medicaid contract.
We're a small community, and, I think there's a lot of pride that we can take in our ability to take care of our folks, There's no reason we can't come up with a solution that, Buffalo can't, If this was Erie County, they'd be coming to the proposal with 30 positions. We're talking about 2, so it's a much more reasonable.
We should be talking about 6.
Right.
But I mean, 2 is
Then
gonna,
Jenny can come up and talk about.
well, I'm just saying, if 2 is not gonna solve the problem, then
We're trying to solve OFA's problem only, am I correct?
Right. And I do think it's a good place to spend money to try to delay that Medicaid eligibility. That pretty star that we had at the beginning of the presentation, we want to we serve people for 6 years for a fraction of the cost of Medicaid. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jennifer Jones for Permanent and Transitional Housing Project.
More of just a discussion, we don't make anything formally prepared, but we wanted to bring the board up to speed. When we did the committee goals back in January, one of the goals was to try to make some progress on homeless and transitional housing needs in Lewis County. And Jenny has been leading the effort with some of our local agencies. So TLS has been involved, Snowbelt has been involved, and we actually have made quite a bit of progress. So Jenny, why don't you summarize everything?
Okay, I will try. So homelessness and all those problems are a multifaceted issue, right? It can be economics, it can be domestic violence, it can be mental illness, substance abuse, whatever. So people, a lot of times, come into DSS for emergency housing. So you have emergency housing as one thing. What we've been looking at is how do we ease up and either prevent people from entering emergency housing or leaving it much faster. So there's some funding available through OTDA, we call it HHAP funding, Homeless Housing Assistance Program, these acronyms. HHAP, and every year they put out funds that counties or not-for-profits like Snowbelt Housing can apply for, or development companies to build places. That's the brick and mortar money. And there's a lot more this year through like the Home Consortium, through HHAP, because of all these ARPA funds that have come out across the state. Then the second pot of money that we've been looking at to try to blend in is something called ESHI, and that's Empire State Supportive Health Initiative. And that is for the case management component of helping people that have been homeless that need supportive services. Someone that would remind them of, you've got your Credo appointment today. Don't forget you have your TLS appointment. All those kind of things that you're doing. Plus, helping kind of manage a structure full of people that have difficulties in many facets of their life. So think of what was going on at the Pleasant Night Inn, right? And then put that as not a hotel, but a permanent place with apartments in it. You want someone around that's gonna help people support and manage their lives so that they're productive and the place doesn't fall apart. So that's called Ishai money. So those services are usually provided by a mental health provider or substance abuse provider. So we at least have commitments from TLS saying they'd be interested in helping and applying for Ishai funds. And then Snowbelt Housing is interested in being a developer to try to create a project in Lewis County. Now, Lewis County has never accessed HHAP funds, ever. And so we don't have any of the current models functioning in Lewis County to assist people in that way. We have one program run through DSS in partnership with TLS called the Gateway Project. And that's when we help supported housing. And there's only about five families, but it's scattered sites. So they lease an apartment above Jeff's, they lease an apartment in Krogan, they lease an apartment in Harrisville. So they're scattered sites, so people aren't in one structure. And that is always full. It's always rotating, always full. So then we obtained some consultation with an attorney out of Rochester, Monica McCulloch, who has been able to develop several projects in several counties along these same lines, supported housing and transitional housing. So after speaking with her, we then moved on to, made a road trip, right? Lisa went with us, Lisa, Ryan, myself, and Jalen from Snowbelt went around and tried to look at what are some options in Lewis County? What could be converted, maybe as part of an economic development thought process along with helping our constituents? Or what could be built? Where is there vacant land that makes sense? Now, we all are still reeling from the conversation of a month ago. What do we do with people that are sex offenders? Because they can't live near schools and they can't be in certain locations. So, and what do you want to see on your main streets, right? Who do you want living there and supported, and how does it continue to look good? So we looked at a combination of places that were for sale. So, thank goodness for the internet. And we looked at a few larger structures in Lewis County that are actually for sale. We looked at one, a large structure that is not technically for sale. So we went and looked at that. Many of you might remember an old adult home out on the Rudd Road, right? So that place is kind of out and about. But people that need supportive services, just like Crystal mentioned, those are for medical or aging. You really need supportive services. We need them to be in town. We have transportation issues. We have just lots of, grocery shopping even is in town. These people are not going to have vehicles. They're going to rely on public transit. Absolutely. There's no income level. These are people that have no income or public assistance, SSI. So it's pretty low income. And then we looked at some vacant property sites around the area. I don't know how far you want me to go with what sites we looked at, or is that okay?
Yeah.
We looked at, if you drive up Stowe Street Hill right before the DSS, there's a vacant lot that our maintenance department mows that's owned by the county. And that lot is big enough to build a building on.
We used to have a county home.
Right, we used to have a county home. So there's a spot there. There was some talk about a place on Water Street. There's an old distributing company it's been sold. Someone owns that and they're using the garage, but that's a very large vacant area, kind of off the main drag. And then these other houses around the area that were for sale. We also went into the Andover House. The Presbyterian Church has, over the course of the past couple years, talked about how to maybe divest of that structure and what could we do with it and still meet a mission of a church to help people. So we were able to go look, and it's very old and needs a lot of work. We would know anything we would have to do to meet code and HHAP funding would be a gut, right? And anything's a gut or a new build by code requirements for that kind of stuff. So we've kind of landed on a model of that we're going to need a couple different kinds of apartments for Lewis County. One is transitional apartments, and that's someone ends up in the hotel on Friday night, right? My on-call worker gets a call, someone's homeless, it's below 32 degrees out, they're freezing, they have no place to go. We're still gonna have to use a hotel periodically. Then maybe Monday, when we can do some screenings and we can access information, figure out if they need to stay here, what's going on in their life, is there other options? They could go immediately into a transitional bed. So it's not a shelter, I want to be clear, that wouldn't be a shelter, it'd be a transitional bed. So if you think about a college dorm suite is the idea that you look at. You'd have maybe 3 bedrooms, common living room, common kitchen, two bunk bed, a bunk bed in each room or 2 beds in each bedroom for a shared space. So 3 bedrooms would accommodate about 6 people. And then they stay till a permanent apartment becomes available. And that could be a permanent apartment in the same structure or a permanent apartment that's elsewhere. Valley View, the Bateman, any of Snowbelt housing. They move to Section 8, find a private landlord, right? Not everybody that's homeless is a bad tenant. Many are, but not all. So that screening process would help, and it gives them time to land on their feet, make sure they're housed, start their services. So Pat does a very good job of informing you about people coming out of jail and what do we do while they're in jail. And then when they walk out that door, we want to also make sure they have access to those services that they need for treatment, whether it's drug treatment, mental health treatment, medical treatment, anything else they may need. So it gives them a safe spot to land to get started again. Then surrounding that transitional apartment would be permanent apartments. Separate entrances, you'd want to keep them separate, but then a permanent structure. Certain, like Valley View, like Karcher Estates, like those kind of places. Very small, efficiency, 1 bedroom or studio style apartments for people. Now, obviously, they would never be as big as Valley View or Karcher. We're looking, what we can't really land on, our analytics haven't got us there yet, is how many apartments. But a lot of that may depend on where we build or renovate. So what I think is on for later today is an RFQ about engineering. So you're getting above the scope of what I understand about rehabilitation of apartments and structures, is having an engineer, putting out a request to work with an engineer to help us rank and rate multiple options, build or renovate, and what's going to get us the biggest bang for our bucks, right? So there's going to be county money in here, but there's also going to be applications going out absolutely for state funding, for HHAP, for ESHI, for the Home Consortium, and probably CDBG and our Continuum of Care funding. There's a lot of ways to blend the money together. This would be the first project of this type in Lewis County. My thoughts are if we can move people out of emergency housing, so they're not staying in that hotel for 30 days, they're staying for a weekend or 2 or 3 days, and we can have a place that eases up that congestion at hotels, right? I think our county and our surrounding counties are always going to have that need for that emergency because simply taking care of people in the middle of the night is, you got to make it easy to get them someplace. So that's what the idea is behind that. I think we came up with about 5, and actually I added to Ryan the other day, I said, we didn't look at the Glenfield School. And realistically, the county owns the Glenfield School. And I think we would be remiss not to look at that to see what that could look like for supportive and transitional apartments. That would, I'm certain, be a lot of work, having seen the building upstairs, downstairs, and inside out. There's a lot of work, but a lot of schools have been rehabilitated to apartments like that.
Now, it's not in town, but we're changing the bus route because DSS is moving out there. So we can change the bus route, we can do some other things, and it's a pretty piece of property out there. So we want to include the Glenfield School, the vacant lot near the DSS, and the Andover House definitely, because the church is interested in getting rid of that very economically. And then maybe 1 or 2 other places in the county. So I think we wanted to come up with a limit of 5 to have an engineer look at and give us some ideas to rank and rate locations to move forward.
Do you have any idea how many transitional apartments you're talking about and how many permanent?
Transitional, I think we would be fine with 1 apartment that would hold 6. But that's just my guess.
Is that a workable situation, throwing a bunch of strangers into the same
Yes,
bedroom?
that's what's happening. That's what happens now. We actually looked at, we had the house on Dan Street, and the problem with the Dan Street house we had is we didn't have staffing, right? We didn't have 24-hour staffing, we had day staff, but we didn't have night staff, and that's when we ran into issues. Yeah, so this way we can have staffing at the location for both types of programs, and that's what becomes expensive, is the staffing portion of ESHI and the project development. You have to include that supportive services for that. So we're thinking, go ahead.
I just want to clarify a couple things. So we're talking about, I want to make sure we're clear on where the county's exposure at this point. The county, what we're asking is the county to employ these engineers, so we would be paying out upfront money for the engineers. The project would be owned by Snowbelt, okay? So it would not be our property. Snowbelt has agreed to be the owner for this. And we would not staff it either. It would be Snowbelt, TLS, Lewis County Opportunities. We've had great input from our local agencies in terms of those wraparound staffing options. The construction costs, we've got this consultant out of Rochester that is going to help us walk through those projects, those applications, because we've tried an application before with the Lewis County Jail, the old jail, and it was unsuccessful. So we want to get a consultant on board that's been through these waters. So theoretically, the construction costs would be paid for because Lewis County's never tapped into this money, and the state is flooding this money right now. So construction should be fine. And theoretically, the ongoing cost should be covered by the ESHI grant. Now, we talked about this earlier with Leanne's presentation about, we kind of joked about state money and funding sources and how they tend to dry up after a certain amount of time. But at least in the short term, we're very confident that this building, whatever we do, would qualify for those ESHI funds. So our exposure is, at this point, leading the initiative, employing the engineers, employing the consultant, and working through with our local agencies. Once the project is built, then we'll have a lot of involvement because a lot of the rent payments and subsidies will come through Jenny's office, but hopefully it would go through to the agencies. So
ESHI that I talked about, one of those components is those support services, but it's also rental support. I forgot to mention that. So if you get ESHI for those permanent supported apartments, it's $25,000 per unit per year. That's how they fund that. And you need that higher rent rate because you have to keep a new building up, right? We have to build a building with, sheetrock that isn't, when you touch it, it doesn't crumble, right? You gotta use higher level materials. You gotta build a tough building, right? Because otherwise it's just gonna fall apart. And then you use the rest of that, so you have a higher rent amount, and we use some different rent supplements for this ESHI, and then the support services to staff it and help monitor people and give them some care management while they're there.
And would you also say that this long-term will save money because we're not housing at hotels for weeks at a time?
It should, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And, I say 6, is that enough? I'm not 100% on that. Maybe I say it's 12, right? Once we get an engineer to look at places.
But what we've done, kind of like I equate it to renovating the DSS building. We can't keep kicking the can down the road and saying, let's try this, let's move it that. We've got to come to some break point and start making some decisions on this. It's interesting for me, the consultant that I spoke with said she's never started with a social services commissioner calling her. It's always started with a developer to do this work. So we're not an attractive county for developers to come into, right? Because they want to build the big ones, right? They're building 50 apartments, 100 apartments at a time. Warren and Washington County just opened this exact model. In Warren and Washington County, it's 2 counties together through a mental health association project doing this. So they gave us a lot of information about how they made transitional apartments, how they made their permanent apartments, how they made separate entrances, and how they staff it and how this works. Very interesting concept. It took 2 to 3 years to get it moving along. So these things don't come that quickly. The last train of thought we had is maybe there's an option where it's one project in 2 locations. Maybe it's a new build and renovate the Andover house. But we need someone with some engineering understanding to really help us along the way.
Our human services crew has brought this as far as we can without some real expertise in terms of this structure could be broken down into 4 units, 5 units, 6 units. This structure could be this. We need some real specifics. This lot could fit a building of this size. And so that's what I would ask the committee to consider the county's contribution to be, is hiring that engineer so we can continue to narrow down options and then hopefully tap into some of this grant funding with a really good application.
For lots of reasons, there's a rental shortage or the cost of rentals is so high at this point. Anybody on a low income is having trouble finding that. There's a lot of reasons that happen. A lot of people didn't pay rent during the pandemic. A lot of people do damage. A lot of our landlords are saying, I'm getting out of that business, like I'm done, right? I'm selling rental properties. And the escalated costs are what's causing people to sit in the hotels for longer periods because they can't find anything that's affordable to move into as well. We haven't really landed on a whole package, like, do you put families in there? My first thought is, gosh, no. Like, we can usually find places for families, but this Warren Washington project has a couple family units in it. And they think that works. So it's an interesting concept to look at. And this Monica that I mentioned, this consultant, I think can help us really better identify the numbers.
Do you have an estimate on the cost of hiring an engineer?
I have no estimate.
Well, that's what we were hoping.
We put out a quote, an estimate for quotes, and then we would know from there.
So we didn't do we talked about this with Brian, our purchasing director as well. We thought an RFQ because we can just simply ask for what's the hourly rate of your engineers, what are the projects you have experience with, right? What are your references, and we can kind of then interview them like we did with the project manager. And we don't really have enough information for an RFP. Like, we
Not
can't
yet.
say these 5 sites and we want to know exactly A, B, and C. We kind of need their input to help us
And I think
understand
after
what
that
we
point, we're working with Snowbelt Housing after that to really, they'll be the lead for development for that. Okay, any other questions? Great, thanks. Thanks, Jen. Okay, Patrick, is that it?
Amending compensation plan with reference to the Office for the Aging by creating 1 temporary office specialist position at grade 11, salary range $16.38 to $18.77 per hour for heat.
Any discussion?
Can we just create a position to help with heat last month for social services?
Yeah.
Do we need another one?
So HEAP is administered by 2 departments, Office for the Aging and DSS. We typically bring in extra help in DSS every year. This is different. This Office for the Aging position is different. We have a part-time person that typically will go full-time during peak season. We just pay them extra hours. They're not interested in doing that this year, so we'd still like to try to get those extra hours of help. But our phones do ring off the hook from seniors and community members.
Is there an end date? I mean, it says temporary, how long is temporary?
It'll be for 12 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks.
We'll see if we can get somebody.
Right.
For 10
After
to
the
12
heat
weeks.
season.
Right,
We'll
right,
find somebody.
we'll finally
Yeah.
get some.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries.
Authorizing amendment to the agreement between Lewis County Public Health Agency and Excellus Health Plan for the Diabetes Prevention Program to obtain reimbursement for services provided to eligible participants.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. Carries.
Authorizing agreement between the Department of Social Services and Hand in Hand Early Childhood Center for Daycare Services from September 1st, 2022 through August 31st, 2023 at the daycare market rate established by Hand in Hand Early Childhood Center up to the DSS fair market rates as established by the state.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. Carries.
Authorizing acceptance of temporary assistance for needy families, allocation in the amount of $25,000 for non-residential DV services and agreement between Lewis County DSS and Lewis County Opportunities as service provider under the plan.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carries.
Amending indigent burial policy and procedures through the Department of Social Services to reflect increased rates and give authorization for the Commissioner of Social Services to adjust the rates as needed to comply with the requirement under Social Services Law 141.
Any discussion?
Just a quick note on this, we haven't updated rate since 2017, I forget. Jenny, do you remember?
2016.
2016. We currently pay $2,000 per indigent burial, which, as you guys know, is not nearly enough. So we're trying to make it worth the while of our funeral services. We usually spend about $60,000 a year on indigent burials.
Any questions? All in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. Carries.
I have a motion to authorize Social Services Commissioner Jennifer Jones to create and send out an RFQ for engineering services on concept phase of permanent and transitional housing options.
I'll make that motion if I can get a second. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. Carries. And I think that's it. I'll make a motion to adjourn. If I can get a second. Thank you.
Finance and Rules Committee minutes that have been passed out before. You will have a second.
Sure. I beat you that time.
Yeah. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. I guess we start off with a presentation from the Lewis County Jefferson Community College Education Center and JCC Motion staff.
Thank you. So, good afternoon. My name is Megan Statler. I'm the Associate Vice President for Strategic Initiatives at the college. I oversee workforce development, institutional research, and the School of Business. And as part of that, I also have oversight of the Lewis County Ed Center, coordinating with our partners, BOCES and Cornell Cooperative Extension. So, thank you so much for your time today. First thing is, I just want to express the college's gratitude for the Lewis County Center education building. It's a beautiful building to have programming in. We're really proud whenever we're bringing in students, community members, local employers, that we have such a just beautiful space to host the education and training events. So we are deeply grateful for that and for the support of the public servants here in Lewis County. Mr. Miche, Joan was here, I don't know where she went. Brittany Davis, Cassandra Buell, Jen Prager, Matt O'Connor at the building, Lisa Hetzner. Really, everyone has just been wonderful to work with. So I'm very grateful and happy to be here today. So I'm going to be providing a recap of what we've done over the past year and what we're planning for the upcoming year. So first, we're seeing a lot of traffic in the building. This past spring, we were very happy to see our local employers take advantage of the space and do some rentals for employee training, for management meetings, including Nina Paper, Kraft Heinz, Res America, and VS Burglar. So we're hoping to see more of that, but that's really exciting for us because it also helps us build those employer relationships to do hopefully ongoing training for them to help them retain and expand their businesses. The county has also made really great use of the facility. Unfortunately, this past year, we've had the opportunity to respond to a couple of disaster situations. We had a storm earlier in the year. The county was distributing ice to local residents who were without power for an extended period of time. And of course, we've been dealing with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and the county was able to make use of the space to distribute some of the tests for local residents. Just this past August, and we're looking to schedule it again, we hosted an Excel workshop for county employees to help them learn how to do their job more efficiently and use the tools that the county has invested in Microsoft Excel. So we had 26 employees who were able to come to the center for that event. And we've had over 100 county meetings over this past year. So folks are booking that space when they're looking for a professional environment to bring in community members. In total, I think it might surprise you, we've had over 1,600 people sign into the facility since September. So when folks come in, they give us their name, and over 1,600 folks have walked through the building. So the college programming, we opened in 2019, we started offering programming in 2019. We went through the pandemic, which limited our ability to do face-to-face, and we're coming out on the other side of that. I've been in the position for 2 years. I was able to hire 2 full-time individuals to help with this, individuals that happen to be residents of Lewis County and really feel passionate about our ability to expand programming to Lewis County. So we've done some new things. We're continuing to offer credit classes in the facility. So for Lewis County residents that are unable to, or it's a burden for them to travel to Watertown for our classes, we are offering our most popular gateway courses in Lewis County to help folks out there. And especially, I'm hoping we might see greater enrollment as it becomes more costly to drive down to Watertown with gas prices. And then in terms of other education and training, we're really focused on what is it that local employers need. What industries are hiring and what are the skills that they are looking for? And what are their barriers to employment? And one of the major barriers that I'm sure you've heard about, and I'm sure you've already heard people bragging about our in-home childcare training provider program. But childcare is a huge issue for folks and for local employers looking to hire. And so we, with the leadership of Lewis County, we developed a program in partnership with the Small Business Development Center and the Community Action Planning Council to train folks to operate in-home childcare businesses, which are more affordable, they're more accessible geographically, and they're more flexible with their hours. So it's a great win for the community. We had in our first round 2 new providers open up in Glenfield and Copenhagen, so that's 16 childcare slots. We are working through our second class right now. We're anticipating 2 more providers, one in Lowville, one in Lyons Falls. So that will be 32 childcare slots in this community, which is a small center. Only these are, kind of scattered throughout the county, making it really convenient for parents. So very proud of that program. It would not have been possible without the Lewis County Ed Center and the support of our Lewis County partners. We know that there is a truck driver shortage, not just in Lewis County, all over the North Country. These are really great paying jobs, and folks can get trained relatively quickly and get into a career field where they can support their families with a really nice wage. So we piloted a program last fall with the support of Lewis County, with the advocacy of Mr. Bichet, and we graduated 5 students. They all got their license and they're all employed. So building off of that success, we're going to be offering again this fall and hopefully doubling the class size. So getting more folks, more Lewis County residents trained, credentialed in a really great career field.
Can we pause on that for a second? Because the county offered partial scholarships to the first 5 students as kind of a brainchild between the college and us and the IDA to kind of, and local employers to kind of get this program moving. It will be up to the board, if we double that number of scholarships, that becomes an amount of money that you guys are gonna have to kind of move on because we don't have it sitting on a line item ready to go. So if you've got any questions or thoughts, that's something that's probably gonna be coming before the board. When are we trying to launch that next?
September 6th, I believe, is the start.
The course starts September 6th.
So if that's something that the county, is 100% committed to kind of sponsoring some more scholarships, then, if you have any thoughts or questions, we've got Megan here now to talk about it. So.
Happy to do that, thank you. That's a program that's just life-changing for those individuals. I don't know who was able to attend the recognition event, but really proud day for those students and their families. We also, again, we're focused on where are the needs, what training is needed for local employers, for the community, and we know that the health field, you need employees. You're just going to need more folks in all different ranks in allied health and nursing, and so we offered our phlebotomy program. And we had 9 students participate, complete, get credentialed, and they are ready to enter the workforce. We offered that program in consultation with Lewis County General Hospital to make sure that there were jobs on the other side of their completion. And so we're continuing to work on that. We also offered, just this past month, it was in June, ServSafe training. This is a really short-term training for individuals in the food and beverage industry, for local restaurants. And that was supported through employment and training those participants. So it was a great win for the community. Folks got some entry-level skill training. Employers were able to hire folks that had a little bit higher level knowledge coming into the role than they would otherwise. So that was good timing for the summer season when folks are looking to hire more help. Our Notary Public training was very popular. We had 22 students, so we're just gonna continue to offer that in Lewis County, knowing that it is a high demand for folks. This year we have the opportunity, so the college received grant funding from the Northern Border Regional Commission to support education and training. And we invested that into some new agriculture short-term workshops, doing things like precision ag through drones, controlled environment with hydroponics, vet science, and home food processing. So it's a series of workshops for adult and youth. There's a companion adult and youth program under each of those content areas. And those are happening all summer long. And we've had 30 individuals sign up for those. They're offered at no cost to community members because it's grant funded. It's our way to kind of try some new things, see what works, and then build upon that next year and perhaps charge a nominal fee for things that seem to be in high demand. I'm particularly interested in the vet science one. I think that that's going to be something we continue to build on. We're also offering the Food Venture Program. We're doing this in partnership with the Small Business Development Center and Naturally Lewis. There are a lot of individuals in the county that have their own home recipe, their own food product that they're producing that they want to bring to market, but they may not have the skills to, draft up a business plan, figure out how to market their product, making sure that they're following all the Department of Health safety regulations, the legal requirements, thinking about taxation. And so this is a pretty intensive 12-week program that we're offering, again, free of cost to community members. And we have 19 individuals, 19 small business owners that are taking this next step to hopefully grow their business in Lewis County. And then finally, our Small Business Development Center in Watertown, we have an advisor who we have located at the Lewis County Ed Center building 1 day a week. And through that, she's been able to attract 30 new clients. And those are folks that are aspiring entrepreneurs or small businesses looking to build their business in Lewis County. That advisor was able to secure over $2 million for those 30 clients through disaster relief funds and other traditional mechanisms for accessing capital. So we're doing some new things. We're focused on the workforce. We're focused on the industries where people need training for the jobs that are available. So in summary, we've got 30 new small businesses we're providing free advisement, free support to. We have 86 college students that have gone through our workforce training programs. We had 4 employer training events, over 100 county meetings, and over 1,600 visitors walk through our doors. But it's not just JCC. We are very proud to be partnering with BOCES, SUNY Poly, as well as the Cornell Cooperative Extension. BOCES held 2 really well-attended events. The first in March with 42 youth. That's an engineering challenge. And then they're operating a day camp right now with 17 youth participating. We have a mechatronics lab at the Ed Center, which is really unique. And we offer that training in partnership with SUNY Poly that has the expertise in that very technical field. And so every winter they offer that training to our transitioning soldiers out of Fort Drum. And they'll continue to do that. And then finally, Cornell Cooperative Extension is taking the lead in organizing an open house event, which you are all invited to on August 4th, 2 to 7. Feel free to stop by, tour the facility. There's going to be, I think, some food trucks. We're going to be doing demonstration. We're going to be flying those drones around. So it should be a nice event. I think we'll have some giveaways as well. So take a moment. And BOCES, so if they were here, they would tell you how excited they are to be offering brand new programming in Lewis County in heavy equipment operation. So that is something that they have not provided before. They have 19 students that are ready to enroll in that program in the fall. BOCES is working very hard in identifying the instructor and going through the hiring process. But this is a brand new program, so we're gonna have forklifts and other heavy equipment items in that big lab space at the center. So brand new programming, and those students are gonna graduate BOCES ready to enter into a career. Looking ahead, we're doing a lot of new stuff. We're starting with an HVAC program in late August. That's the first time the college has ever offered that. And that's a program that we think we'll be able to build on. So this is sort of a test to see. We've got 4 students right now enrolled. I think we're gonna see more as we get closer to that start date. CDLA, I'm expecting we're gonna have 10 students enrolled in that. And so marketing, looking for funding for those students, working really hard to make sure that anybody who wants that opportunity to change their life, to change their family's life, can have it at the Lewis County Ed Center.
It was $6,000, maybe $6,200 per student was the scholarship we did last time. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, it was about that. I think it was 60-50. And what we've done is we've packaged, it's approximately $7,000 now because we've packaged some of the extra expenses as an all-in cost for the student to make it a little bit more manageable for them. And the college, we're working hard on employer sponsorships for that program. So we haven't touched base, but that's something that Joanna is very aggressively pursuing because we would like to see our local employers invest.
The CDLA, is that with your own equipment or is that through National Tractor Trailer or?
That's through National Tractor Trailer. They've got the expertise, they've got the trucks. We are grateful. The truck that you will see up here in September is actually branded with JCC now. It's got a big JCC logo on it. So that's exciting and great advertisement when they're driving around town.
They came back, many, many times for the students that traditionally it takes 2, maybe 3 road tests before you pass, apparently, the North Country DOT examiners. But they kept coming back and back to these students until they passed, as much extra training time as they needed. So I was pretty impressed with that.
In terms of the health programming, health needs, we have heard that our local dentists are struggling to find dental assistants. And so this is brand new programming to Lewis County. We just ran it for the first time in Watertown, and it was very successful because people see that as a career field, and there's a ladder there. You come in as a dental assistant with some basic skills, and then you could go on to become a dental hygienist if you wanted. Good paying jobs, nice work-life balance, and certainly a big local need for dental assistants. So that'll be in September. We ran a construction program a couple of years ago. Had a lot of student interest, and the program worked out well, but we did learn a lot through it. In terms of exactly what employers are looking for, what the prospects are for students at the end of it. So we did a couple of things. We sort of did an analysis of what we did previously. We brought employers in and had a conversation. We did a survey to construction employers, and we've come up with a new and improved program that will help students if they want to go directly into the workforce, they want to work on a construction site right away, or if they're interested in apprenticeship, which is a great option for a lot of people to learn a skilled trade. So this program will do both of those. We applied for grant funding. I am cautiously optimistic we're going to receive it, and then we'll be launching that program in very late October. So this past year, we also, I mentioned, we're very happy to be hosting some of our larger local employers. We want to do more of that. That's going to be a priority this year. Like, let's reach out to them, see what they need, offer up that space and build those relationships. And then also we found that the programming that was kind of focused towards entrepreneurs and small businesses, people seem to register for those in pretty good numbers. And so that's another area where this upcoming year we want to have a renewed focus and try some different things. So that's kind of where we were this past year, what we're looking at for this coming fall. Again, we're just very, very grateful to have such a beautiful facility to be running the programming in and for the support of all your public servants in Lewis County.
For instance, the child care program, how often do you do that?
Well, it's not on a regular schedule. We ran the first cohort in Lewis County, and it was pretty clear, like, okay, this model is working, this is gonna help the community. So that ended in December, and then in March, we decided to run it again. So they would finish by August, so they could get their businesses up and running by September, when a lot of parents are looking for childcare. And so I think we're gonna continue running it once per year. That's what we're thinking right now.
How long is that program?
It runs between March and August, so 5 months.
I was doing the same thing. Now, like the food program, entrepreneur program.
Yes, yes.
You said that was 12 weeks. How often do they meet during the week, or is it like 2 nights a week or something like that? Is that how that works? Or?
I don't have that right at my fingertips right now. It's not a full-time program, so
I guess that's what I was
it
wondering.
is shorter term, just consistently over 12 weeks. The CDL now, that's full-time because in 5 weeks, we get them in and we get them out. And so it's it's really a full-time job for those students once they enroll for 5 weeks.
And when does that one start?
September 6th,
Now, on the first slide that you had there,
yes.
is that, no, the one before that, the first one? I guess not.
That's okay.
There we go, that one. Is that person on the left there, one of the phlebotomy?
I feel that it wasn't the most flattering picture I grabbed of her. That is Michelle LaCroix. She operates Shelley's daycare. She's one of our our new child care providers in Lewis County.
She was a practice patient.
That's what I was wondering.
Hey, Phil, did you see these two cats?
Yeah, I did.
Operating a daycare.
Bill, this is her at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah. So, I guess in that childcare, now, once they pass that course, how many children can they take care of?
8.
That's the maximum?
Yes.
Now, there's a lot of people out in the community that are just in daycare. Right, I mean,
Yes.
but it must be a huge benefit to take this class.
Yes, so, in New York, you need to be you have to be a regulated daycare provider in order to operate, within New York State guidelines, I believe legally to operate. With that said, there are
Yeah,
a
if
lot
you're
of.
gonna run a daycare business and market yourself that way, you have to comply with New York State education guidelines for running a daycare.
But if you don't hang up a shingle, if your neighbor's kids just happen to show up,
Yeah, I think that so some of our participants, were watching, maybe their sister's kids during the day and basically use this program to help them navigate what is kind of a complicated, year process to get regulated in order to comply with what they needed to. So this program also helped, those individuals turn their business into a legitimate business.
Well, Here's the other thing, we talked a couple months ago, Jenny showed the slides about how the subsidies are about to go up and the income qualifications are coming down, right? So more middle-class people are gonna be eligible for subsidy. The state will not pay a subsidy out. So many businesses.
It has to be a license.
So all these middle-class dollar, all these funding that's gonna be coming in from the state, we need, if we're gonna tap into that as a community, we have to have more certified providers.
I'm used to the old days where
Yeah,
everybody just.
that's what I would do.
So it's not like that anymore. We need these services.
The other thing to mention before we let Megan leave is that if you can believe it, our initial 5-year contract with JCC for use of the facility will be expiring because we built it in 2018 and it is now 2022. So I believe that expires at the end of this year. Not that we need to discuss or decide that today, but keep in mind that we will have a resolution coming forward as long as JCC continues to be willing partners, which it looks like they are since they've got programming scheduled into next year. We'll have to consider an updated contract lease deal with JCC as well. Just a thought.
How does anybody, general public, find out what's being offered?
So a couple of different ways. Everything's on the college's website, and we make really good use of social media. What we have found is that Facebook is a very popular referral source. So we do some social media for free. It's on our website. We also do some paid marketing through News Junkie, and the folks at Naturally Lewis, Brittany and Jenna, are so creative and helpful in terms of getting the word out there. That's really the majority of what we do, but for the childcare program, for example, Brittany said, I really think lawn signs would work. And so they had lawn signs printed, and so we kind of did like the low tech and then also the high tech. And so I think that blend is what we'll do moving forward, and I think word of mouth is just probably our best referral
Okay,
source.
because I had heard a couple comments in the past that the JCC site was a little bit difficult to find out what was here.
Yes. I think that's probably fair. That's something that we're continuing to work on. But I think that's probably a fair assessment, and we would like to prove it.
I'm wondering if you could cut and paste what goes on at the JCC site from your site, so we could put it on the Lewis County website.
Well, I just had that thought, Jones, we're in the process of designing our new
Yeah.
website.
Yeah.
Maybe we need a landing page
For
for
JCC.
that just cuts through, because I know what Tom's talking about. If you go on your website, it's all the programs, and then you have to look at which
Yes.
one has the
Yes.
indicator that it's here.
Right.
Maybe we could have a landing page
Just for
that
what's
just
going on
had,
here.
has the
That'd be
programs.
great. That would work.
Wouldn't that be a smart idea?
Even you did it.
Oh, Joan can make it.
All right, anybody else have any other questions or comments? We thank you very much for the update.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One for your visit, right? Whatever it's called.
Thank you.
Great.
We've done a couple of things that have been added that aren't on here. We want to do them before or after August.
Up to you.
Up to you. Okay. Eric, it's your show.
All right. Thank you for the late addition. I handed out that short one-page sheet. Just actually some things I was working on this morning. I thought it would be good to update you on our contingency funds. So if you can look at that detail, and hopefully the explanations are pretty clear. I kept them short, but hopefully that makes sense as to what we've approved over the course of this year for use of contingency funds. And up to date, because even what we talked earlier today about the jail inmate boarding, that use $50,000 up to date, we will be left with $1,000 of contingency funds. I think that's a little unusual at this point in the year to be down to that level. So informational today, I think think what I would propose, if it's okay with you, is they'll come back next month with a resolution docket item to reestablish some contingency funds drawing on fund balance to put, I might actually recommend a couple $100,000 in for the rest of the year, so you can have those funds available if needed.
And these are estimated.
These are what we've authorized.
I understand that part, but the $50,000, we don't know for sure we're gonna spend all that.
We don't.
Or the 40, but those, I understand we've committed it.
Right, so we moved those funds into that department's line item, they might not spend all of it, or in the jail case, they might even need more before the end of the year.
I would just comment that there have been years where, we've been very budget conscious, knowing that our revenue was gonna, come close to what we anticipated. This is not one of those years, our revenue is gonna be far more than what we anticipated, so I think it's okay. We've got a lot of positive momentum out of this board, a lot of, really worthy goals that we're trying to achieve this year. I think a couple $100,000 to keep the ball moving is not out of line, especially knowing our revenue is gonna come in very strong. Now at the end of the year.
200 is not a big deal in the whole world.
No. And, that's where we can pay those engineers that we were just talking about with, with Jenny. And there's other things that are gonna come up, so.
We can't be out of money, we still got checks.
There you go.
We use them all the time. So again, no action today, just informational, and again, if you're in support, we'll bring that back next month for some additional funding.
Questions or comments? Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The other topic, I guess, I'm not sure who it's presented, the legislative districts, or do we want to do that in a
I can take a shot at it, although I'm not the expert in it. The redistricting committee has come up with different scenarios. We have to redistrict because our individual districts are out of line percentage-wise. The state used to allow 10% variance. Now they've decided that 2.5% is the maximum, which forces us to redistrict. So this is the current district map now of our districts. This is a new map of what, I don't think we can make space here. What our districts would look like if we stayed with 10 legislators. So the major differences are Andrea, Lisa, Ian, Andrea, and Tom. Oh, also mine, yes, because in this scenario, Tom picks up some of the town of Watson. Ian picks up some of the village of Lowville, or the town of Lowville. Lisa shifts a little bit. She gets part of the village of Krogan. This section here is going to be redrawn, and these people will come from someplace over here. I lose the town of Osceola, that goes to Jeff. And I pick up a little bit. And I pick up a little bit of Lyons Falls too. I pick up the rest of the village that's on the other side of the river. Josh stays the same. And I think Phil, I'm not sure, I think Phil loses a little bit on the southern border, which goes with it. I'm not sure exactly where the changes are.
It looks like right there, but
So you people are involved. So this is a 10 board presentation, 10-person board. 10 legislators. If we stick with this, with 10 legislators, we can do it by a board vote. If we switch to 9 or a different number of representatives, it becomes a fall public referendum. So this balances everyone out within, I think it's like within less than 2%. That's the,
It has to be.
yeah,
It's gotta be 5% variance to 2.5%.
less than 2.5, right.
But it's very hard to do that in such a
Right,
small population to get that close.
But something has to be done this year, Larry.
yes. So, that's the
Who's on
10
this board?
legislators.
On the, who does the redistricting?
2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. I'm not exactly sure who, I wasn't involved, I don't know. Jeff.
Mike Young, I was on it.
Jenny Jones is on
Jenny
it.
Jones is on it. Warren Mathis, not sure what his last name.
Lauren Linedecker,
Linedecker,
Russ Farnell.
Russ Brunel.
And they recommend 10 for this map, or they
Well,
don't make recommendations?
They're just doing the different scenarios. I think this probably is their recommendation, but it's a model for us whether we want, what we want to move forward. They're willing to do whatever we want to do. But if we shift from 10 legislators, it becomes a fall public referendum. In that case, we need to make a decision before someday in August, what we're going to do. In this packet, they've drawn up a 9-member district. I think 9 members combines these 2, or it may be possible to do, for 2 other districts, I'm not sure. But we combine, I think the way they were looking at it, I don't know why it would be, if it would be, you know, it would.
So the
that
path,
district would be 1 person.
the path of least resistance is to keep 10 and set
Right.
these
Except
small
for
modifications. I get, are they small to you, Jeff? I mean,
Small to me.
You're getting Osceola.
Well, there's all,
You keep dangling that in front of my face.
That's 13 steps in the middle of nowhere.
I know. Photo on the chair.
one of the issues is the districts have to be contiguous. So, you know, it's between Jeff and I, what you do with Osceola. It's either gotta go one way or the other. You can't give Osceola the job. in other words. Yeah, all the area has to be contiguous. So there's a scenario for 9, and there's also a scenario for 7.
How long have we attended board meetings?
Since 2004, the first time I was a legislator, there were only 9
Why there's only 10?
because of the same problem, redistricting and the population shifts within the county. You went to 10 to accommodate, at that time it was 10%.
How
Populations are
often
changing.
does this happen with the census?
This is only,
This will
it's every
be-
10 years.
This will be, whatever map this board adopts, whether you adopt this or you send to referendum, that will be the map for the elections of 22, 24, 26, 28, and 30.
It's
Because
every
that's the
10
next
years.
year. That's the next
But there
census.
has to be, this time what drove it was the reduction down to 2.5%. It used to be 10%. So we stayed in balance throughout until the last census.
So with this 2.5%, it's probably have to happen every 10 years.
That's possible.
I'd say the only reason to reduce the number of seats is if we had a major population reduction. And if we haven't, we've basically been stable for the last century in our population.
It's about right.
I don't see a whole lot of reason to, few more legislators, it's any type of legislative body. More legislators, potentially more chaos, but we conduct our meetings pretty well. But you
Are you
also
saying that
get
you need more chaotic?
More ideas.
more ideas and more constituent servicing. It's much easier to go to 2 town board meetings than 3. or, yeah,
or 5.
or 5.
Then you'll
You're right down to 4, Larry.
They should
Then you go to
do
4.
Except, so you can review these different scenarios here. I asked for a map of 9, but I guess if we go down to 9, I guess it takes a while to produce that. So I said, this is what we have at this point. I'll throw it on the table and at least everyone's up to speed with where
It's barely in that district.
Your house.
No, I'm still in my district.
Oh.
It's getting close to my house.
We did talk.
Oh, you're not supposed to.
Yeah, please. We're not? Well, they didn't tell me that.
Don't draw it around it.
That'd be fun.
So
Beaver
if-
Falls district.
If, I think you have to really vote on it at the August meeting, depending, if you're even gonna consider going down to 9. Because we have to have that, we have to start the process.
If we decide to go to 9,
Yeah.
it becomes a public referendum. And Ian works, she's also on the committee from Board of Elections. We'll get the date of when we need to make that decision.
But a map has been drawn for that.
He's downstairs drawing it out.
Okay.
Just in case. They went round and round with this, because it has to be done by census block also. So Russ is the majority of the work there, trying to define the districts, stay within the state and quarter.
And it wasn't a requirement, but also we wanted to stay within current election districts, so we didn't want to have to create a whole other polling site and buy another machine or pay more workers and everything to it.
So that's where we're at. I don't know what everyone's comfortable with that or.
We can have Russ,
I don't see any reason why not to be.
Larry, we can have Russ scale that down to an email version for all the board members if you want.
Okay. Yeah. Can ask him to do that. If we want to stay with 10, there's no point in him doing a lot of work redrawing a 9 map, so I guess.
Send it 10.
Yeah. So if everyone is comfortable with this scenario, there'll still be some minor changes for Lisa and Ian. I think that is the only other thing, that's the only change that needs to be made from that map.
I lose the city of Belfort,
Really?
a little bit of it, that's
So
what.
that's one less village.
A little bit of
A little bit of Belfort is a lot.
Do they hold them at the hotel or?
Well,
Who gets the end, that's all that matters. The hotel.
Any other questions or comments or from other legislators that aren't on the committee that?
You okay with it, Ian?
Yeah, I just as soon avoid the cost of a referendum. I don't see any reason to reduce. If it were just a question of do we reduce the seats, I see no practical benefit to that.
The only other reason to do it would be if one of the involved legislators, wanted to retire or whatever. But I don't see that as
I think
a reason either.
the percentages get better when you go to 9 or 7. We're walking the line, of getting it within 2.5. The 9 or 7, it was squarely within the results.
But we're still within it, we're still in compliance, right? So if we're in compliance.
We're in compliance. The largest spread, I think, is 1.9. What's the 98.1? Which would be the lowest. That would be Phil because he lost all.
As long as I still have a hotel, that'll be okay.
I'm losing the Osceola hotel.
Yeah.
There we go.
All in favor?
My favorite place to eat.
Okay.
Well, if everyone's comfortable with it, I'll tell them to draft the effort on going to 9.
Can we get a motion for that?
Okay. Do we get a motion to stay with the 10? Is that how we want to work? Stay with 10 districts as presented?
I'll make it.
Bill, we get a second? Jeff? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
And then we'll have the resolution for the oldest one.
Could he email Matt?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Russ to downsize it, send it to him.
He'll do it in a way that you can zoom in right close to.
Right.
Thanks. Yeah, if we downsize that, it's gonna be very difficult to figure out. That road is in. Okay, that's that.
Very good. And I guess that takes care of all the surprises.
I'll have one later. I'll have them later.
Oh, boy.
You ready for
Dr.
motion?
Jeff.
First one is setting the public hearing for LMI broadband connection CDBG project number 636 CBPF9-21 on September 6th, 2022 at 5:00 PM.
Any questions or comments on that? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing sale of 12.41 acres of county-owned property located at 36080 State Route 26, Champion, New York.
Questions or comments?
That's a gravel pit, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
We don't use it anymore?
No.
For many, many years.
It's not even in the county,
Let's see that.
yeah.
But I'm just wondering if, personally, if I'm gonna sell something, make sure that, okay, I haven't used it in a few years, but what about, are there any projects down the road or? is it-
We used to own our own gravel pits and we would get our own, gravel for roads and, mix for cold patch and whatever. We had several gravel pits back in the, 50s and 60s. But we don't use any of them now. In fact, we don't even run gravel. We typically have it delivered on site, so we don't really have a need for it.
And, yeah, and Jeff, the superintendent of highways, looked back with his predecessors and they haven't used it in maybe decades, so.
Okay.
Who knows what the reserves are there as well? Say reserves, it's your aggregate that's on mine.
Right, I understand that, but I mean,
We're gonna put it out through an auctioneer, so could bring some good value, who knows?
should.
Okay.
Why an auctioneer rather than like real estate?
They typically get better pricing.
Like online auction, so you have like 2 weeks, then it drives the price up, so it's not just like the first person bids on it, you can bid it up, you get more. We just say $30,000 for stuff there, but we might get 40 or 50.
Well, we have to, it's a publicly owned asset. You have to have some type of bidding, whether
There are a
it's
couple
a
parties.
sealed bid or an auction or whatever. We typically like the online auction because you can see what the other bids are and it drives things up, sealed bid process.
There's interest in it, go nearby one.
Do we know what the reserves are? Is there any research on that, which would drive the value up?
I don't know, it's a good question. I know that Tim did a lot of work on this, and he's on vacation today, but why don't we bring back some more information for the board meeting? And before we make the final decision, we can have a brief discussion, and Tim can be here to discuss some of those things. I know Tim has been out there himself, we've done some research on it. I was shocked to find we even owned this. You know what it came out of is I had an intern last winter and I was looking for projects for him to do. I said, will you make me a spreadsheet of every property owned by the county? And he came up with this. I'm like, it's not even in the county. What is this? So Tim's new. I'm relatively, 5 years, I'm relatively new. And we didn't even know that we owned it. So
I think Jeff has a good point, if there's some value on the
Right.
reserves that may.
That would help.
That'll
We should at
show the
least put it
interest.
in the description in the auction.
Right, I mean, because potentially the person that's going to buy this is somebody that's gonna
May
buy it for the reserves. I mean, it's worth much more for the reserves if they're there than it is for a building lot or a pasture, or it's either one of those, so.
I think it's surrounded by
There's two.
another court.
Quarries right there now, and the solar project. Right out there in there, so there's.
I know, I looked, I went on Google Maps when I read this to see where it was, and then, you know, the satellite view, I saw it was.
Yeah, let's have Tim bring some more details on August 2nd. That'd be a good idea.
So do we want to move on this or just table it until then?
Totally up to you guys. That's,
We can move on it, and we still have to vote on it at the August meeting.
Yeah, just get more information.
it's not going in.
Yeah, I don't wanna hold it up, I'm just saying maybe.
Well, and
All right.
it's not really being that low because it's sat there for years, so you can sit there for another month, it's fine.
Okay, we vote on it pending more information.
Sure.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Setting the 2023 workers' compensation apportionment for Lewis County Self-Insurance Plan using claims experience, payroll, and full property valuation.
Questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Carried.
And then I have a motion to authorize CNS companies to create and send out an RFP for the construction phase of the DMV Board of Elections addition/renovation project.
I'll make that a motion. Do I have a second? Josh? Any questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Aye. Motion passed.
Tom, I'm wondering if, given Ryan's discussion with the person, with Megan from JCC, whether or not the committee wants to consider a motion for scholarships for Lewis County residents who are going to attend the CDL program, because that's in September. If we're going to market that scholarship, we should do it now to get people to sign up.
Well, we got Eric got moving contingency money. We're out.
But we won't have to pay them right away, right?
Right, sure. I don't know, it looks like you're asking for 7,000 per student. They had asked me months ago, and I had pushed back a little bit and said, you know, we wanted to get this up and running, and we were generous with the first class. But if the private businesses want this, you know, they need to put some skin in the game. And then it's, in my mind, it's okay for the students to pay a little bit too. I mean, they're, you know, taking a 15-week course or a 5-week course, whatever it is, you know, they could put in a little bit. So I don't know if we have the exact amount yet and in fact, I know we don't have the exact amount, but I was hoping that JCC would come back with a hybrid where, well, we've gotten a couple sponsors to cover, you know, $2,000 a class, and we're asking the students to cover $1,000, and then, you know, whatever could be left we could consider, but they haven't really narrowed that down yet. So.
My only question is, you know, if we're subsidizing this program, is it fair to the rest of the program? Phlebotomy and the rest of them, why aren't we subsidizing them? Why just CDL?
Well, we are subsidizing the child care program too.
But there's other ones. It doesn't, like you stated, Larry, it doesn't seem right to just pick out one or two. I mean, I understand that they're both serve the county. Actually, childcare helps our county probably more than the CDL.
Right.
There was a time unemployment would pick up half, 3/4 of whatever tuition was for CDL license.
And they do. So if you're eligible through Lisa Hetzner's department there, you know, through Jenny's got the workplace with Lisa. There are some students who got part of their funds picked up through that last time. Why don't we have JCC, why don't I call Megan here later this week and figure out exactly what they're asking for and we can bring it back. So.
Yeah, come back a little more firm.
She said it
numbers.
started when?
September 6th, the day after regular.
7 weeks.
Well, we will have had our August committee meeting by then. So,
How much does, a class cost? Like, I wanna go to a phlebotomy class, what's the,
I think the CDL is one of the more expensive ones. I think the
I think
phlebotomy.
she says it's about
Right,
7,000.
I don't know
They
what
charge a lot for
phlebotomy
CDL.
is. Well, that national tractor trailer program is expensive.
So is the return. The return is well worth the $7,000, I should think.
Right. Which is why the company and the individual should be willing to
right,
put it
totally on that.
a little bit. So we did we had enough money in the budget through an education line item that we have to help out for the first cohort because we really wanted to get this up and running and there was some resistance from Jefferson County, frankly, if I'm speaking freely. They didn't believe in this national truck and trailer and we wanted to show that it could be successful in the North Country and try to expand it as a key program at the Ed Center. And so, I kind of committed unilaterally at that time, well, we've got some funds for education, let's try to get this off the ground. Now that it was successful, I don't think that can be the county's role every time, is to provide, those scholarships. So, anyway, we need to know the exact amount that JCC wants and then the board can consider.
Okay.
So I'm just going to ask for a very short attorney-client privilege session to talk about a tax foreclosure issue.
Okay, so Ryan's not gonna talk.
Absolutely not.
We'll be short, okay.
We won't let him.
All right, I have a motion for an executive session. Jeff, second by myself. All in favor to go into executive session for a very short, non-Ryan executive session? Aye.
All right.
Opposed? We're gonna go into executive session.